I left without a word. Then my phone buzzed. A photo of the empty driveway. Captioned, "Finally, the freeloader is gone." I watched the likes climb like a public vote on my value. I did not argue. I simply waited. I let them enjoy their victory for exactly 7 days, right up until the moment they called me in a panic because they realized the roof over their heads actually belonged to the person they just kicked out. My name is Everly Parker. I am 34 years old, and the sum of my existence in the Maple Crest suburbs just fit into the back of a rental sedan. The departure was surgical. I did not slam the heavy oak front door. I did not leave a dramatic note on the kitchen island where my sister, Mallory, usually staged her morning coffee photos for Instagram. I simply closed the door until the latch clicked a small, metallic sound that felt like a guillotine dropping on the last 3 years of my life. My husband, Omar Ruiz, sat in the driver's seat. His hands were gripping the wheel so hard his knuckles looked like polished marble. He didn't look at the house. He was looking at the road ahead. Or perhaps he was just trying not to explode. We had agreed on this. No scenes, no screaming matches on the lawn that would give the neighbors free entertainment. We were leaving the way smoke leaves a room quietly, inevitably, and without asking for permission. "Is that the last of it?" Omar asked. His voice was low, controlled. "That is everything," I said. I didn't look back at the house either. It was a sprawling 2-story colonial that looked beautiful from the street, the kind of house that screams the American dream. But I knew the rot inside the walls. I knew which floorboards creaked when you tried to sneak a bill payment into the mail before the final notice date. I knew the temperature of the air when Mallory was in a mood because the engagement on her posts was down. We drove out of the driveway. The gravel crunched beneath the tires. It was 10 in the morning on a Tuesday. The neighborhood was silent. The manicured lawns of Maple Crest were bright green, chemically perfect, empty of people. We turned the corner, past the community park, past the high-end grocery store where Mallory insisted we shop despite the prices, and merged onto the highway leading toward the city of Ravenport. My phone sat in the cup holder between us. It was face up. For the first 20 minutes, there was peace, just the hum of the engine and the feeling of distance growing between us and the toxicity we had called home. Then, the screen lit up. It wasn't a call. It was a notification from Facebook. A tag. I knew what it was before I even touched the glass. Mallory. I picked it up. My thumb hovered over the screen. Omar glanced at me, his eyes narrowing. "Don't look at it, Ev," he said. "Just block them. We are out. We are done." "I need to see the narrative," I said. "I need to know what story they are selling." I unlocked the phone. The photo must have been taken 5 minutes after we pulled away. It was a high-angle shot, probably taken from the second-floor window, looking down at the empty driveway where our car used to be parked. The concrete was bare. There was an oil stain near the bottom left corner Omar's old car, before he sold it to help pay for the roof repair last winter, but otherwise, it was just an empty slab of gray. The caption was short. Mallory Vance never wrote long paragraphs when a single sentence could do more damage. Finally, "The freeloader is gone." It hit me in the chest, cold and sharp. Not the word itself, I had heard her use it under her breath 1,000 times, but the public nature of it, the audacity. She had tagged me. She had tagged Omar. She wanted us to see it. More importantly, she wanted her audience to see that she had purged the parasites. I watched the screen. The post was 2 minutes old. 3 likes. 5 likes. 10 likes. It was climbing. It was a digital applause meter. And everyone was clapping for my eviction. "What is it?" Omar asked. He saw the reflection of the blue light in my eyes. "She posted the driveway," I said, my voice steady. "She called me a freeloader." Omar slammed his hand against the steering wheel. "I am going to turn this car around. I am going to tell them exactly who paid for that driveway." "No," I said. I reached out and touched his arm. "Keep driving. Do not stop." I scrolled down to the comments. This was the part that truly dissected you. It wasn't just Mallory. Mallory was a narcissist. That was a known variable. The shock was the chorus. Mrs. Gable, the neighbor 3 doors down who always waved at me when I brought in the mail, had commented, "About time. You have the patience of a saint. Enjoy your peace." Sarah Jenkins, the head of the local PTA, and someone I had helped organize a charity drive for last year, wrote, "So proud of you for setting boundaries. Family can be so toxic when they take advantage of your kindness." I felt a bitter laugh bubble up in my throat. Boundaries, kindness. These people saw a curated reality, a stage play directed by my sister, and I was just the villain who had finally been written out of the script. Even some of Mallory's coworkers, people I had met at holiday parties, people who had eaten food I cooked, were chiming in with heart emojis and gifs of people popping champagne. Then I saw the one that made my stomach turn over. It was a comment from my mother. "Janice, we love you. Honey, you did the right thing. Now you can focus on yourself." And right below it, a like from my father. "Graham." They weren't staying neutral. They weren't staying silent. They were actively participating. They were clicking a button that validated the lie. My parents, who knew exactly why we had moved in, who knew exactly whose name was on the utility bills, were publicly patting Mallory on the back for kicking us out. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a system, a coordinated effort to rewrite history while the ink was still wet. "They are all in on it," I whispered. "Mom and Dad, too." Omar's jaw was set so tight, I thought he might crack a tooth. Let me reply. Just one comment. I will post the bank transfer screenshots right there in the thread. I will burn it down right now. "No," I said again, sharper this time. "Absolutely not." Why are we letting them win?" "Because a comment is an argument," I said, staring at the phone. An argument implies there are two sides. An argument gives them fuel. If you fight back now, you look defensive. You look like the angry squatter trying to save face. So we do nothing. We do the opposite of nothing. I took a deep breath. My thumb was trembling slightly, not from fear, but from the sheer adrenaline of what I was about to do. I logged into my account. I didn't block them. I didn't untag myself. I tapped the heart icon on Mallory's post. Then I went to the comments. I liked Mrs. Gable's comment about Mallory's patience. I liked Sarah Jenkins' comment about toxic family. I liked my mother's comment about doing the right thing. I went down the list, methodically, efficiently, like, it was the digital equivalent of smiling at your executioner while they sharpened the blade. "What are you doing?" Omar asked, glancing over at the screen. "I am agreeing with them," I said. "I am validating every single lie. I want them to feel safe. I want them to feel like they have won so completely that they stop looking over their shoulders. That is masochism. Ev." "No," I said, locking the phone and placing it face down. "It is bait." We arrived at our new apartment an hour later. It was on the outskirts of Ravenport, a modest 2-bedroom on the 4th floor of a building that smelled like industrial cleaner and stale coffee. It was not a suburban dream house. It didn't have a double-wide driveway or a porch for photo ops, but the lease was in our names, and the air inside felt clean. We spent the afternoon hauling boxes. The physical labor was grounding. Lift, carry, set down, repeat. It stopped my brain from spiraling. We unpacked the kitchen, first the coffee maker, the toaster, the plates, essentials. We didn't talk much about the post, but it hung in the air between us like static electricity. Every time my phone buzzed, I knew what it was. Another comment, another notification that someone else in our circle had decided to join the stone-throwing festival. By 7 in the evening, we were exhausted. We sat on the floor of the living room, eating pizza from a cardboard box, surrounded by the debris of our move. The sun had gone down, and the city lights of Ravenport were flickering outside the window. "Are you okay?" Omar asked. He wiped tomato sauce from the corner of his mouth. "You have been quiet for 2 hours." "I am fine," I said, and I was. The initial shock had hardened into something else, something colder, dense. "I checked the post again," Omar admitted. 93 likes, 40 comments. Mallory is replying to people now. She is playing the victim card hard, saying how difficult it was to support us for 3 years. Let her talk, I said. Let her say everything. Every word she types is another nail. I stood up and walked over to the kitchen counter where I had set up my laptop. It was a sleek, silver machine, my workhorse. I worked in risk analysis for Kestrel Ridge Analytics. My entire career was built on finding patterns in data, spotting liabilities, and documenting facts. My family thought I just sat at a computer all day. They thought I was a glorified secretary. They had no idea that my job was literally to catch people who thought they could hide things in the fine print. I opened the lid. The screen glowed to life. I navigated to the desktop. There was a single folder sitting there, isolated from everything else. I had created it 6 months ago. The day I realized that Mallory's forgetfulness about money wasn't accidental. The folder was named Receipts. I double-clicked it. The window opened, revealing a cascade of subfolders, organized by year, then by month. Inside those were PDFs, screenshots, scanned documents, and audio files. Utility _, payments _2023.pdf, property _, tax _transfer _confirmation ... PDF, Mallory _, Vance _, email _, admission _ 04 _12.p, NG Bank _ statement _ highlight _ grocery _ run ... PDF, grandfather _ trust _ deed _ original _ copy ... PDF. It was all there, every dollar I had transferred, every bill I had paid because Mallory was short this month or waiting on a check. Every text message where she asked me to cover the internet bill because she needed the money for networking events, but the most important document wasn't a bill, it was the deed. The true history of the house in Maple Crest. They called me a freeloader. They thought I was a guest who had overstayed her welcome. They thought the house belonged to Mallory because she acted like the queen of the castle. I looked at the file labeled title _ deed _ ownership _ trust. I right-clicked on the desktop and created a new subfolder inside Receipts. I named it the _eviction _ post. Then, I picked up my phone. I opened Facebook again. The post had grown. 112 likes now. I took screenshots. I screenshotted the main photo. I screenshotted the caption with the timestamp. I screenshotted Mrs. Gable's comment. I screenshotted the PTA president's comment. I screenshotted my parents' betrayal. I screenshotted Mallory's replies where she claimed she had drained her savings to help us. I transferred the images to the laptop and dragged them into the new folder. I was archiving their arrogance. I was preserving their cruelty in high definition. Omar walked up behind me. He looked at the screen, at the rows of files. He rested his chin on my shoulder, his heavy presence anchoring me. "That is a lot of ammo," he murmured. "It is not just ammo," I said, staring at the file names. "It is the truth, and truth is the one thing they cannot manipulate with a filter." "When do we use it?" he asked. "Tomorrow." "No," I said. I closed the laptop, the sudden blackness of the screen reflecting our faces. "Not tomorrow. Tomorrow is too soon. If we strike now, it looks like a spat. It looks like drama. We need to wait until they feel untouchable." I turned to face him. "Mallory thinks she has won the court of public opinion. She thinks likes are legal tender. She has no idea that she just confessed to defamation and fraud on a public platform." 7 days, I said. "We give them 7 days to celebrate. Let them have their parties. Let them badmouth us at the grocery store. Let them tell the whole town that the parasites are gone." I walked over to the window and looked out at the city. Somewhere out there, in the quiet, manicured streets of Maple Crest, my sister was probably refreshing her feed, getting a dopamine hit every time another person sided with her. She was feeling lighter, freer, superior. She was sleeping soundly in a master bedroom that she assumed was hers. "If they want to make me a public joke," I said, my voice dropping to a whisper that was louder than a scream in the empty room. Then I will turn them into a public lesson, not with a Facebook post, not with a shouting match. I looked back at the laptop. I will destroy them with law and paper. The week had just begun. And for the first time in 3 years, I wasn't afraid of what was coming. I was the one bringing it. To understand the sheer absurdity of the word freeloader, you have to understand the optical illusion of the American suburbs. In places like Maple Crest, success is a visual performance. It is a suit pressed at the dry cleaners on Tuesday. It is a leased luxury SUV leaving the driveway at 7:30 in the morning. It is a badge on a lanyard and a physical office with a water cooler. If you do not have these props, you do not have a job. You have a hobby. You are figuring things out. I did not have a commute. I did not have a uniform. I worked from a corner of the guest bedroom, wearing sweatpants and a headset, staring at 3 monitors for 10 hours a day. To my parents and my sister, I was indistinguishable from a teenager playing video games in a basement. The reality was that I was a senior risk compliance analyst for Kestrel Ridge Analytics. My job involved auditing high-stakes corporate contracts for liability loopholes. I spent my days sifting through data that could save or cost a company millions of dollars. It was quiet, cerebral, and incredibly lucrative work. It was also entirely invisible to people who believe that work only counts if you come home sweating or complaining about traffic. 3 years ago, Omar and I were not looking for a place to stay. We were living in a loft downtown, paying our mortgage early, and talking about taking a trip to Italy. We were fine. We were better than fine. The move to Maple Crest was not a rescue mission for us. It was a rescue mission for Mallory. I remember the call vividly. It was a rainy Tuesday in November. Mallory was sobbing so hard I could barely understand her. She was sitting in the kitchen of the big colonial house, the house that had always been the crown jewel of her identity, telling me that the walls were closing in. "I am going to lose it, Ev," she had choked out. "The maintenance, the taxes, the heating bill, it is drowning me. I can't do it alone anymore. I need help, just for a little while, just until I get my head above water." She sold it as a partnership. She proposed that Omar and I move into the downstairs suite. We would split the living costs. We would be family helping family. It sounded noble. It sounded like the right thing to do. My parents, Graham and Janice, had looked at me with teary eyes and told me I was being a good sister. So, we rented out our loft, a decision that still hurts when I think about it, and moved into the suburbs to save Mallory's dignity. Within 2 months, the narrative began to shift. It was subtle at first, like a slow gas leak. Mallory would introduce us to neighbors not as my sister and her husband who are helping me with the bills, but as my sister and Omar, who are staying with me for a bit. The difference in phrasing was small, but it did the heavy lifting. Staying with me implied charity. It implied that she was the benefactor and we were the refugees. I tried to correct her once, at a barbecue. "We are actually cohabitating," I said with a smile that didn't reach my eyes. Mallory just laughed, a tinkling, condescending sound, and patted my arm. "Oh, Everly, you have always been so technical with words. Have a burger." The dynamic in the house was even worse, because I worked from home. My physical presence became a trigger for their resentment. Mallory worked as a part-time interior design consultant, which meant she spent a lot of time driving around with fabric swatches and meeting clients for lunch. To her, that was hustling. When she came home at 3 in the afternoon and saw me in the kitchen making coffee, her eyes would glaze over with judgment. "Must be nice," she would say, dropping her keys on the counter. "I have been on my feet all day. You are lucky you can just lounge around the house." I am not lounging. "Mal, I just finished a 4-hour audit on a supply chain merger." "Right," she would say, already scrolling through her phone. "The computer stuff. Well, since you are here and not busy, can you empty the dishwasher? I am exhausted." It became a routine. Because I was home, I was the default housekeeper. If the lawn needed watering, the freelancer should do it. If a package needed signing, wake up the freelancer. If the dog vomited on the rug, call the freelancer. Omar was treated with a different kind of disrespect. He worked as a structural engineer, which meant he actually left the house, so they respected his fatigue slightly more, but they viewed him as weak, in the eyes of my father. A real man controlled his household. A real man wouldn't let his wife sit around in pajamas while her sister struggled to keep the roof up. They whispered about him at family gatherings. I heard my mother once say to an aunt, "Omar is a sweetheart, but he just lets Everly do whatever she wants. He doesn't push her to get a real career." But the financial abuse was where the knife really twisted. It started with the internet bill. The first month we were there. The connection was spotty. I needed enterprise-grade fiber for my work server connections. "I can't afford an upgrade," Mallory had said, throwing her hands up. "I am barely making the minimum payments on my credit cards. I need it for work," I said. "I will pay for it." "Great," she said. "Can you put it in your name? My credit score is a little fragile right now, and Comcast wants a deposit if I do it." I did it. The bill was $250 a month. Then it was the electricity. "You are home all day running those computers," Mallory argued. "You use 80% of the power. It makes sense for you to handle that account." Then it was the water, then the gas. Then came the property taxes. Last year, the county assessment came in. It was steep $6,000. Mallory went into a depression for a week. She lay on the couch, watching reality TV, crying about how the city was trying to bleed her dry. "We can't lose the house, Ev," she wailed. "This is our family legacy." I paid it. I wrote a check for $6,000 to the county treasurer. When I told my parents, expecting perhaps a thank you, my mother just nodded and said, "Well, it is only fair. You two have been living there rent-free for so long. It is good you are finally contributing your share." My share, I was covering almost 70% of the household operating costs. But because the mortgage, the visible symbol of ownership, was technically associated with Mallory, I was just a tenant. Mallory was brilliant at weaponizing social media to reinforce this. She was building a brand as the resilient single woman holding it all together. I became a prop in her tragedy. I found out about the photos by accident. A friend from college, someone who didn't know Mallory well but followed her, sent me a screenshot one morning. "Is everything okay with your job?" The text read, "Your sister's post is intense." I opened the image. It was a photo of me, taken from the hallway through the open door of the guest room. I was slumped over my desk, head in my hands. It was 2 o'clock in the morning. I remembered that night I had been dealing with a crisis on a contract for a client in Tokyo. I was exhausted, stressed, and focusing. But Mallory's caption told a different story. "Up again. Another night. Another gaming marathon for her while I stress about the electric bill." I love my sister, but watching someone waste their potential is the hardest part of being the strong one. Praying she finds direction. I felt the blood drain from my face. She had framed my hard work as sloth. She had framed my exhaustion as irresponsibility. I scrolled through the comments on the screenshot. "You are a saint, Mal." One person wrote, "Kick her out." "She needs tough love," wrote another. "I don't know how you do it." I would have snapped. She was harvesting sympathy likes using my image. She was building her engagement numbers on the back of my defamation. I confronted her about it the next morning. "It was just a vent post, Ev," she said, dismissing me with a wave of her hand while she poured almond milk into her coffee. I deleted it after a few hours. "Don't be so sensitive. You know how hard it is for me right now." "You lied," I said. "I was working. I was paying for the electricity you were complaining about in the caption. It is my perspective. Everly, you can't police my feelings." Omar wanted to leave then. He packed a bag. He stood in the driveway and told me that we were being eaten alive. "They do not see us," he said, his voice shaking with rage. "They see a wallet and a punching bag. We have to go." "We can't just leave her," I had argued, my own conditioning as the fixer kicking in. "She really is broke. Omar, if we leave, the house goes into foreclosure. Mom and Dad will be devastated." I stayed because I thought loyalty meant enduring abuse. I stayed because I thought that if I just paid enough bills, if I just solved enough problems, eventually they would have to acknowledge my value. I was wrong. You cannot buy respect from people whose entire self-esteem relies on looking down on you. The breaking point wasn't a fight. It was a realization of just how deep the deception went. Mallory started asking me to sign for things for convenience. "I am out showing a house," she would text. "Can you sign for the new patio furniture? Put it in your name on the slip so they don't get confused. The landscaper needs a check. Can you write it and I will Venmo you? Just easier that way. Can we put the new security system on your card? I lost mine and I need to get the points." I did it. I signed. I paid. I created a paper trail a mile long. But the real twist, the thing that made me stop crying and start collecting receipts, happened 3 weeks before we moved out. I came home early from a rare in-person meeting. The house was quiet. I walked into the kitchen and saw Mallory's phone on the counter. It was unlocked, recording a voice note. She was talking to someone on speaker Trent, her ex-fiancé, a man she claimed to hate. I stood in the hallway, frozen. "It is perfect. Trent," she was saying, laughing. "I have almost enough engagement to pitch that mommy blogger sponsorship. The struggling provider angle is gold. People love a martyr. I just need to keep her here a few more months to milk the content. Plus, she paid the property tax again. So I bought that bag I wanted. She wasn't broke. She wasn't drowning. She was using my rent money to buy designer accessories and using my existence to sell a sob story to the internet. I backed away. I didn't confront her. I didn't scream. I went upstairs, opened my laptop, and created the folder. That was the moment the freeloader died, and the auditor was born. Now, sitting in my new apartment, I think about the caption on her driveway photo. Finally, the freeloader is gone. It is a bold claim to make about the person who subsidized your life for 1,000 days. But here's the question that keeps me warm at night. The question that Mallory, in her arrogance, forgot to ask herself: if I am just a guest, if I am just a freeloader, and if this is her house, then why is the internet contract in my name? Why is the security system account in my name? Why are the utility accounts in my name? Why is the tax receipt in my name? And most importantly, why does she think she can kick me out of a house where the very infrastructure that keeps the lights on and the water running belongs to me? She thinks she evicted a parasite. She has no idea she just evicted her own life support system. And unlike a fuse box, you cannot just flip a switch to turn me back on. The folder on my laptop screen was open, but the real power lay inside a fireproof lockbox that currently sat on the floor of our new bedroom closet, tucked behind a stack of winter coats. Inside that box was a document that weighed less than 5 ounces, but held the crushing weight of a $2 million reality check. To the neighbors, the postman, and the entire social circle of Maple Crest, the house at 42 Willow Creek Lane belonged to the Vance family, or more specifically, they believed it belonged to Mallory Vance, the struggling, troubled single woman who had inherited it and was just trying to keep the lights on. That was the story my parents told at dinner parties. That was the story Mallory wept about on her Instagram stories. But property law does not care about stories. It cares about deeds. It cares about the chain of title. And if you followed that chain back to its source, you would not find my sister's name. You would not even find my parents' names. You would find the name Walt Hennessy. Walt was not our uncle by blood, but he was the only adult in my childhood who actually saw me. He was my mother's best friend from college, a bachelor who made a fortune in logistics and invested it in real estate, while my parents doted on Mallory the loud, charismatic, demanding child. Walt would sit with me on the porch, teaching me how to play chess, or listening to me talk about math problems. He saw Mallory's greed early on. He saw how she would snatch toys from my hands, and how my parents would tell me to just let her have it to keep the peace when Walt died 6 years ago. Everyone expected a windfall. My mother had practically spent the money in her head before the funeral service was over. Mallory had been browsing sports cars online. Then came the reading of the trust. I remember the silence in the lawyer's office. It was thick, heavy, and suffocating. The attorney, a sharp-eyed woman named Mrs. Sterling, had slid a thick binder across the mahogany table. She didn't slide it to my mother. She didn't slide it to Mallory. She slid it to me. Walt had placed the house, along with a maintenance fund, into a revocable living trust. I was the sole trustee and the primary beneficiary. The terms were specific, drafted with the kind of foresight that only a man who watched a family dysfunction for 3 decades could possess. The house was to be preserved. Family members specifically named as Graham, Janice, and Mallory were granted a license to occupy solely at the discretion of the trustee. But there was a clause. Section 4, paragraph 3. I knew it by heart. The license to occupy is conditional upon the occupants maintaining a respectful, peaceful environment and, under no circumstances, utilizing the property or its equity as collateral for debts, loans, or financial leverage. When the truth came out that day, the explosion was immediate. Mallory screamed. My mother cried about betrayal. They looked at me like I had stolen the keys from their pockets. "You can't do this, Everly," my mother had sobbed. "You have your own life. Mallory needs this house. It defines her. If you take this, you are destroying her confidence." I was 28 years old. I was conditioned to be the giver, the fixer, the one who made herself smaller so Mallory could feel big. So, I made a deal with the devil. I told them I would not enforce the eviction. I told them Mallory could live there, pretend it was hers, and build her life. I would stay silent. I would hold the deed. But she could hold the glory. "Just don't make me regret this," I had told them. "We won't," Mallory had promised, drying her eyes instantly. "We are sisters. What is mine is yours." It was a lie then, and it was a lie now. For years, I kept the physical documents hidden. I knew that if they had access to the original deed, they might try something desperate. My parents and Mallory operated on emotion, but they were not above bending the truth to suit their needs. I walked over to the closet and pulled out the lockbox. I dialed in the combination 3-1-4-1 pi. I opened the lid. There it was, the deed of trust, the stamped seal of the county clerk, the letter from Mrs. Sterling reminding me of my fiduciary duty. I ran my fingers over the paper. This was the irony that Mallory could not comprehend. She called me a freeloader in a house where she was legally a guest. She mocked me for living off her, while I was the only reason she wasn't living in a studio apartment above a bowling alley. But the most damning piece of evidence wasn't the deed itself. It was the memory of a Tuesday afternoon last year. I had come home from the grocery store earlier than expected. I walked into the home office, the room Mallory rarely entered unless she was looking for scissors, and found her rummaging through my filing cabinet. She jumped when she saw me, clutching a folder to her chest. "What are you doing?" I had asked, dropping the grocery bags. "Nothing," she said, her voice an octave too high. "I was just looking for a stamp. I need to mail a rebate form. The stamps are in the kitchen drawer. Mallory, you know that." I walked over and gently pulled the folder from her hands. It was the file labeled House_Docs. It contained a photocopy of the deed and the trust abstract. "Why do you have this?" I asked, feeling a cold prickle on the back of my neck. "I just wanted to see it," she said, shifting her weight. "I mean, I live here. I should know how the paperwork looks, right, in case something happens to you." That was the moment the blindfold fell off. She wasn't looking for a stamp. She was looking for a way to circumvent me. She wanted the paper so she could pretend she had the authority to sign things. That night, I moved the originals to the lockbox, and that night, I started the digital folder, receipts. I realized then that this wasn't just a living arrangement. It was a hostage situation, and the house was the hostage. I took the deed out of the box and carried it to the living room where Omar was sitting. He was looking at the laptop, reading through the timeline I had constructed. "You know," Omar said without looking up, "most people would have kicked them out the second they started acting up. You waited 3 years. "I waited because I wanted to believe they could change," I said, placing the deed on the table next to his hand. "And because Walt made me promise to try," he said, Give them enough rope, Ev. They will either build a bridge or hang themselves. Omar tapped the screen. Well, with this Facebook post, I think the rope just ran out. He was right. The freeloader post was more than just cyberbullying. In the eyes of the trust, it was a violation of the Peaceful Environment Clause. It was documented proof of hostility. By publicly attacking the trustee, Mallory had effectively handed me the key to the eviction process. She thought she was destroying my reputation. In reality, she was filing an affidavit against herself. Does Mrs. Sterling still practice? Omar asked. She is semi-retired, I said. But for this, she will come back. I looked at the document again. I traced the signature of Walt Hennessy at the bottom. I could almost hear his voice, dry and sarcastic, whispering in my ear. I told you so, kid. The world thought I was the villain. They thought I was the lazy sister who leeched off the glamorous, successful Mallory Vance. They were about to find out that the glamorous Mallory Vance was effectively a squatter in a multi-million-dollar asset controlled by the freeloader. I picked up my phone. I didn't open Facebook. I opened my contacts and scrolled down to the S section. Sterling, Margaret, attorney at law. I didn't call yet. It was late, but I drafted the email. Subject activation of trust protocols, 42 Willow Creek Lane. Dear Mrs. Sterling, it is time. I didn't send it. Not yet. I saved it to drafts. What is the plan? Omar asked, watching me. Do we tell them? Do we warn them? No, I said. If we warn them, they will destroy the house. They will rip the copper out of the walls out of spite. They will stage a break-in. We need to be surgical. So we let them sit there. We let them sit there, I confirmed. We let them think they have won. We let Mallory post her victory laps. We let Mom and Dad tell the neighbors how relieved they are that I'm gone. I looked at the date on my watch. We wait for the 1st of the month, I said. That is 10 days away. Why the 1st? Because, I said, a cold smile touching my lips. On the 1st of the month, the property tax bill is due, and for the first time in 3 years, I am not going to pay it automatically. I am going to let the notice go to the house. I want to see what happens when the owner gets a bill she can't gaslight her way out of. But there was something else. A nagging suspicion in the back of my mind regarding that day. I caught Mallory with the files. Why did she need the deed then? What was she trying to do? I walked over to the window. The city lights were blurry through the glass. Mallory thought this was a social war. She thought the winner was determined by who got the most heart emojis on a status update. She didn't understand that we were playing a different game entirely. She was playing checkers with emotions. I was playing chess with the law. They want me to disappear from their story, I whispered to the reflection in the glass. They want a version of history where I never existed, where I never contributed, where I was just a ghost haunting their hallway. I turned back to Omar and the stack of undeniable legal-grade paper on the table. I will grant their wish, I said. I will disappear from the house, but I'm going to reappear where they least expect me. Where is that? Omar asked. In the court records, I said. And by the time they see my name there, it will be too late to delete the comment. The first 48 hours after the post went live were a study in human arrogance. I did not sleep much, but not because I was tossing and turning in anguish. I was awake because I was working. My new apartment had become a command center. I had 2 monitors set up on the dining table, a pot of black coffee constantly brewing, and a spreadsheet open that would have made a forensic accountant weep with joy. I treated my sister's social media feed not as a source of pain, but as a data stream. Every time my phone buzzed with a notification, I didn't flinch. I engaged. Mallory posted a follow-up story the next morning, a video of her drinking a smoothie in the kitchen. My kitchen with the caption, "Peaceful mornings without negative energy are the best kind of medicine." I liked it. 2 hours later, she posted a photo of the guest room, which she had already begun to strip of my presence, turning this into a meditation space. No more clutter. I like that too. By doing this, I was feeding the beast. My engagement validated her narrative. It told her, and everyone watching. That I was accepting my defeat. It told her that I was watching, yes, but that I was too weak to fight back. And because she thought I was weak, she got loud. She got sloppy. She started replying to comments with details she should have kept private. When a cousin asked why I had left so suddenly, Mallory replied, "Honestly, I had to ask them to leave. My bank account just could not take the strain of supporting 3 adults anymore." Click, screenshot, timestamp, 10:14 in the morning. I dragged the file into the folder. That was a direct lie regarding financial solvency. I spent the third day categorizing the participants. I created a color-coded list in my spreadsheet. Red was for family. My parents, Graham and Janice, were at the top. They were not just passive observers. They were active enablers. My father had commented on the meditation room post. Finally, "You can breathe, honey." I looked at that sentence for a long time. This was the man who had taught me to ride a bike. Now, he was cheering for my erasure. I logged it. Orange was for neighbors. These were the people who smiled at me when I walked to the mailbox. Now they were posting snake emojis. I needed to know who they were because, eventually, the truth would come out, and I wanted to know exactly who would be scrambling to apologize. Yellow was for Mallory's professional network, clients, other designers, brands she was trying to court. This was the most dangerous category for her. She was mixing her personal vendetta with her professional brand. She was showing potential business partners that she was volatile, indiscreet, and prone to public shaming. On the 4th day, I put on a blazer, picked up my briefcase containing the trust documents and the printed screenshots, and drove into downtown Ravenport. I had an appointment with Elias Thorne. Mrs. Sterling, the original lawyer for the trust, was technically the administrator, but Thorne was a shark who specialized in real estate litigation and tenant disputes. I needed a shark. His office was on the 20th floor, overlooking the river. It smelled of leather and expensive cologne. Thorne was a man in his 50s with silver hair and eyes that looked like they could appraise the value of your soul in 3 seconds. I laid everything out on his desk: the deed, the trust agreement, the freeloader post, the thread of comments where she claimed ownership. Thorne read through the papers in silence. He adjusted his glasses. He picked up the screenshot of the driveway. "She calls you a freeloader," he said, his voice dry, "while living in a property held in a trust where you are the sole beneficiary." "Yes," I said. "And she claims here," he pointed to a highlighted comment, "that she pays the mortgage." "There is no mortgage," I said. "Walt bought the house with cash in 1998. She pays nothing but her own credit card bills." Thorne leaned back in his chair and tented his fingers. "This is not just defamation, Mrs. Parker. This is constructive fraud. By publicly claiming ownership and financial burden, she is establishing a false narrative that could be used to defraud creditors. If she applies for a loan and claims this house as an asset, she is committing a felony." He flipped to the trust conditions. "Section 4 is clear," he said. "The license to occupy is revocable. Respectful conduct is a vague term usually, but public libel, that is a breach. And if she attempts to encumber the property, meaning if she tries to use it as collateral, the trust mandates immediate eviction to protect the asset." "I want to be sure," I said. "If I pull the trigger on this, I want zero wiggle room. I do not want a family meeting. I want a legal conclusion." "You have enough right now to serve her with a notice to quit," Thorne said. "But if you really want to nail the lid shut, we wait for one more thing: proof of financial malfeasance regarding the property." He looked at me. "Has she ever tried to borrow against the house?" "I do not know," I admitted. "She does not have the deed." "That does not always stop people," Thorne said. "Predatory lenders do not always check the chain of title as thoroughly as they should, or she might forge a quitclaim deed to put her name on it first." I felt a chill. Would she go that far? Thorne smiled, and it was not a nice smile. People who care more about image than reality will do anything to keep the lights on the stage. Set up a monitor if she moves a muscle regarding the title. We strike. I left his office with a plan. I wasn't going to sue her yet. I was going to watch her try to steal what wasn't hers. When I got home, Omar was sitting on the floor of the living room, surrounded by boxes we still hadn't unpacked. He held a piece of paper in his hand. It was an old bank statement of ours that had gotten mixed in with a stack of books. "Ev," he said, looking up, "I just remembered something." "What?" "The mail," he said. "Back at the house. About 2 months ago." I sat down on the sofa arm. "What about it?" "Remember how Mallory used to beat us to the mailbox?" Omar asked. "She was obsessed with it. If I got home first and brought the stack inside, she would snatch it out of my hands. She said she was expecting checks from clients." "I remember," I said. "There were letters," Omar said slowly, piecing the memory together. "I saw the return addresses a couple of times before she grabbed them. They weren't from clients. They were from Global Lending Solutions and Rapid Cash Advance, and there was one from the county clerk that looked official." "Why didn't you tell me?" "I thought it was her business," Omar said, shaking his head. "I thought maybe she was just in debt and embarrassed, but if she was getting mail from the county clerk, she was trying to do something with the house." I finished his sentence. My heart began to race. It fit. The day I caught her in my office, the panic, the need to see the deed. She wasn't just curious. She was trying to find the legal description of the property so she could fill out forms. I opened my laptop immediately. I didn't go to Facebook this time. I went to the county registrar's website. Public records are a terrifying thing if you have secrets. Anyone can look. Anyone can see who owns what, when it was bought, and if there are any liens against it. I searched the address, 42 Willow Creek Lane. The owner was listed correctly. The Walter Hennessy Revocable Trust. No liens, no recent activity, but that was just the current state. I needed to know if there was pending activity. I navigated to a third-party service that Thorne had recommended, a title monitoring service. It cost $20 a month, a small price to pay for a burglar alarm on my inheritance. I entered the property details. I entered my email. I set the sensitivity to maximum. Now what? Omar asked. "Now we wait for her to get desperate." I said, "We didn't have to wait long. It was day 6. The freeloader post had started to die down. The comments had slowed. Mallory, seemingly bored with the lack of conflict, had moved on to posting links to expensive furniture she planned to buy for the newly liberated space. We were eating dinner takeout noodles when my laptop pinged. It wasn't the soft ping of a social media notification. It was the sharp, jarring chime of an email alert. I dropped my fork. I walked over to the computer. A red banner was across the screen from the title monitoring service. Alert document submission detected. My hand hovered over the mouse. I clicked the details. Type, quitclaim deed, /transfer of ownership. Filer Mallory Vance. Status pending, /under review for signature verification. The room spun for a second. I had to grip the edge of the table. She had done it. She had actually done it. She had forged a document, likely a quitclaim deed transferring the property from the trust to herself, and submitted it to the county. She was trying to steal the house. "What is it?" Omar was at my side instantly. "She is trying to put the title in her name," I whispered. "She submitted the paperwork today, probably this afternoon." "How she needs your signature as trustee." "She forged it," I said. "Or she hopes the clerk won't check closely. Or she thinks that because we moved out. I won't notice until it is too late." I looked at the screen. The audacity was breathtaking. She wasn't just a mean sister. She was a criminal. And she had done this while the freeloader post was still fresh, using the public sympathy she had manufactured as a shield. She probably told herself she deserved it. She probably told herself that since she saved the family image, the house was her payment. "Call Thorne," Omar said, his voice hard. "Call the police." "No," I said. "Not yet. Ev, she is stealing a $2 million house. She is trying to steal it," I corrected him. "The alert says pending. The clerk hasn't recorded it yet. They will flag it because the trust requires a notarized certificate of incumbency, which she does not have." I sat down. A cold, calm clarity washed over me. If I called the police now, it would be a mess. She would claim it was a mistake. She would cry. My parents would get involved and beg me to drop charges. I needed to corner her. I needed to make sure she had no way out. I am going to send a letter, I said. A letter? Not a text, not an email, a formal letter, certified mail, return receipt requested, the kind of letter you have to sign for. I opened a new document. I didn't address it to Mallory. I addressed it to the occupant. I typed fast. The words flowed out of me like venom. To the occupants of 42 Willow Creek Lane. This letter serves as formal notice regarding the status of the property you currently inhabit. Be advised that the Walter Hennessy Revocable Trust is conducting a compliance audit. Furthermore, we have received notification of an unauthorized attempt to alter the property title records. Any such action constitutes fraud and will be prosecuted. You have 48 hours to contact the trustee to discuss the terms of your continued residency, or lack thereof. Govern yourselves accordingly. Everly Parker, Trustee. I didn't mention the Facebook post. I didn't mention the insults. I kept it strictly business. This will arrive on Tuesday, I told Omar. That gives her 2 more days to think she is safe, 2 more days to brag. And when she gets it, she will realize that while she was playing to the audience in the cheap seats, I was talking to the people who own the stadium. I printed the letter. The sound of the printer was the only noise in the apartment. 7 days. I had given them 7 days to show me exactly who they were, and they had exceeded my expectations. They had shown me they were not family. They were liabilities, and liabilities had to be liquidated. The United States Postal Service provides a very specific tool for people who are done with ambiguity. It is called certified mail with a return receipt requested. It costs about $8, but the peace of mind it buys is priceless. It creates a physical chain of custody. It requires a signature. It eliminates the "I never saw that letter" defense which my sister, Mallory, had perfected over 3 decades of dodging accountability. I tracked the envelope online. I watched it move from the distribution center in Ravenport to the local carrier facility in Maple Crest. I refreshed the page at 10:14 in the morning and saw the status change delivered. Signed by M. Vance. The clock had officially started. I did not send a text. I did not call. I sat at my dining table, opened a fresh sparkling water, and waited for the explosion. The letter inside that envelope was not a holiday greeting. It was a formal notice of occupancy status, drafted with the help of Elias Thorne. It stripped away all the emotional padding of our relationship. There were no Dear Mallorys or Love Everleys. It addressed her as the tenant. It addressed me as the trustee. It laid out the reality of the situation in 2 stark, non-negotiable options. Option 1. The tenant enters into a standard residential lease agreement. The rent would be set at fair market value for a 4-bedroom, 3-bath colonial in the Maple Crest School District. Thorne and I had pulled the comps. The number was $4,200 a month. Furthermore, all utilities, water, gas, electric, internet must be transferred immediately into the tenant's name. A security deposit of $8,400 was required upon signing. Option 2. The tenant declines the lease and agrees to vacate the premises within 30 days, leaving the property in broom-clean condition. Subject to inspection. There was no option 3. There was no stay for free because we are family. There was no pay what you can when you can. And then, there was the bolded clause at the bottom, effective immediately. All communication regarding this property must be conducted in writing via email or certified mail. Verbal agreements, phone calls, and text messages will not be recognized. I knew Mallory would read that sentence. I knew she would ignore it. My phone rang 11 minutes after the delivery scan. It was Mallory. I looked at Omar. He nodded. I answered. But I did not put the phone to my ear. I put it on speaker and set it on the table, turning my voice recording app on. "What is this?" Mallory screamed. There was no hello, just high-pitched, vibrating rage. Are you insane? I just had a mailman make me sign for a threat from my own sister. This is not a threat, I said, my voice steady, practiced. This is a structural adjustment. Did you read the options? Options. You want $4,000. Are you high? I don't have that kind of money. Everly. You know I don't. This is blackmail. You are blackmailing me because you are bitter about a Facebook post. The rent is based on the Zillow estimate and recent neighborhood rentals, I said. It is actually slightly below market. If you cannot afford the lease, option 2 allows for a 30-day orderly departure. I am not moving, she shrieked. This is my house. I have lived here for 3 years. I have put my soul into this place. You have put $0 into the equity, I corrected. And legally, it is not your house. It belongs to the Walter Hennessy Revocable Trust. I am the trustee. I have a fiduciary duty to stop the bleeding of assets. You are an asset bleed. There was a scuffling sound on the other end, and then my father's voice came on the line. It was the deep, booming baritone he used when he wanted to end an argument at the dinner table. Everly, Graham said, stop this nonsense right now. You are upsetting your mother. You are upsetting your sister. You do not send legal letters to family. You come over here, we sit down, and we talk this out like civilized people. We are past talking. Dad, I said, for 3 years. The talking resulted in me paying for everything while being treated like a servant. The letter is the new reality. Choose option 1 or option 2. I will get a lawyer, he threatened. I will sue you for emotional distress, for harassment. You cannot evict your own family. You can try, I said, but I suggest you save the legal fees for the security deposit. The deed is ironclad. Then came the weeping. My mother, Janice, took the phone. Honey, she sobbed, please, why are you doing this? This isn't you. You are a kind girl. You are my sweet girl. This is Omar. Isn't it? He is in your ear. He is twisting you against us. Tell him to stop controlling you. I looked at Omar across the table. He was peeling an orange, his face calm, almost bored. He wasn't controlling anything. He was the only one who had ever told me I was strong enough to control myself. Omar is eating fruit, I said. This is me, Mom. This is the daughter you raised to be responsible. I am finally taking responsibility for my property. We are family, she wailed. If we are family, I asked, why did you like a comment calling me a freeloader? Why did you let Mallory humiliate me to the whole town? Where was the family then? Silence. You have 48 hours to respond to the email address listed in the letter, I said. If I do not receive a signed intent for option 1, I will file the eviction paperwork for option 2 on Friday morning. I hung up. My hands were shaking. Just a little. Not from fear, but from the sheer adrenaline of finally cutting the cord. It felt like stepping off a ledge and realizing I could fly. For the next day, they tried to bombard me. Texts, voicemails, Facebook messages. I didn't answer a single one. I had set a boundary, and for the first time in my life, I was patrolling the fence line with a shotgun. Then, the email came. It was from Mallory. The subject line was proposal. I opened it. It was not an acceptance of option 1. It was a counteroffer, dripping with the delusion that she still held some kind of leverage. Ev, I am willing to overlook your little tantrum because I know you are stressed. Here is what I am willing to do. I can contribute $500 a month toward the rent. That is more than fair since I am maintaining the property and keeping it safe. However, if I pay this, I have a condition. You must delete any evidence you think you have, and you must never, ever post anything publicly contradicting my ownership of the home. I have a reputation in this town, and if you damage my brand, I will sue you for loss of income. Let me know when to send the Venmo. Mallory, I read it twice. $500. She was offering me 12% of the market value, and she was framing it as a favor. And the condition she was terrified. She wasn't worried about being homeless. She was worried about being exposed. She valued her brand more than the roof over her head. She still thought this was a negotiation. She thought we were haggling over the price of a used car. I didn't type a long response. I didn't argue about the maintenance she claimed to do. I simply hit reply. I dragged a single file into the attachment box. Trust deed and bylaws executed ... PDF in the body of the email ... I wrote, the rent is non-negotiable ... The terms are non-negotiable ... Please refer to Section 4.3 regarding the trustee's authority to liquidate assets that become liabilities ... You are currently classified as a liability. You have 24 hours remaining. I hit send. That PDF was the nuclear codes. It showed everything. It showed the date Walt signed it. It showed the clause about respectful occupancy. It showed that my power was absolute. 10 minutes later, another email arrived. You think you are so smart, she wrote. You think a piece of paper makes you powerful? You are nothing without me. You are just the boring, invisible sister. If you go through with this, I will destroy you. I will post every embarrassing story, every secret, every mistake you ever made. I will tell the whole city who you really are. I leaned back in my chair and laughed. It was a dry, hollow sound. She didn't get it. She still didn't get it. She was threatening a PR war. She was threatening to gossip. She thought she could shame me into submission because shame had always been her currency. She didn't realize that I had stopped buying what she was selling. I turned to Omar. She is threatening to go public again, I said. Let her, Omar said. She is bringing a selfie stick to a foreclosure hearing. Exactly, I said. She thinks the judge is going to care about her follower count. I looked at the calendar on the wall. The deadline was tomorrow at noon. I almost hoped she wouldn't sign. Part of me, the part that had been silent for 3 years, wanted to see the sheriff's deputy walk up that driveway. She won't sign, I predicted. She is too proud. She thinks I'm bluffing. Are you? Omar asked. I have never been more serious in my life, I said. If she is not out or under contract by Friday, I am not just evicting her, I am auditing her. I closed the laptop. The screen went black. Reflecting my face, I didn't look like a victim anymore. I looked like a landlord, and the rent was due. The deadline was approaching. The air in our apartment felt static, charged with the energy of a storm that was about to break. Mallory had made her position clear. She would not sign the lease. She would not vacate. And if I pushed her, she would use her social media platform to burn my reputation to the ground. She thought the battlefield was the internet. She thought whoever screamed the loudest won the war. She did not understand that in the world of adults, the person with the paperwork does not need to scream. They just need to publish. I sat at my laptop. It was 12 o'clock in the afternoon on a Thursday. I did not write a long, tearful essay about sisterhood. I did not write a rant about how much money I had spent on electricity bills or groceries. I did not tag Mallory. I did not tag our parents. I simply opened a new status window on my Facebook page, which had been dormant for months. I uploaded 2 images. The first image was a screenshot of Mallory's post from the driveway, the one captioned, "Finally." The freeloader is gone, complete with the timestamp and the visible likes from our neighbors and family. I wanted context. I wanted the audience to remember exactly what they had applauded. The second image was a high-resolution scan of the deed of trust. I had redacted the sensitive tax ID numbers, but the relevant information was highlighted in neon yellow. Property address: 42 Willow Creek Lane, Grantor Walter Hennessy, Grantee/Trustee, Everly Parker. Date of transfer, October 14th, 2018. I wrote a caption. It was 30 words long. Regarding the recent public discussion about my residency, fairness requires accuracy. If you felt comfortable liking a public humiliation based on a lie, you should be comfortable seeing the legal proof of ownership. I hit post. Then, I put the phone down. It is done, I said to Omar. Are you going to turn off comments? He asked. No, I said. I am going to let them stand. The court of public opinion is now in session. The first 10 minutes were silent. It was the silence of people reading, processing, and realizing they had made a terrible mistake. It was the silence of a neighborhood group chat, frantically pinging with screenshots. Then, the notifications began, but they were not likes. They were retractions. I watched as the like count on Mallory's original post, which I still had open in a separate tab, began to drop. One by one, then in clusters. People were unliking the insult. They were scrubbing their digital fingerprints from the crime scene. Sarah Jenkins, the PTA president who had commented about boundaries, deleted her comment entirely. Mrs. Gable, the neighbor who had praised Mallory's patience, vanished from the thread. Then came the direct messages to me. Ping, it was Mrs. Gable. Everly, I just saw your post. I had no idea. Mallory told us you were crashing there because you lost your job. I am so sorry. I feel terrible. Ping, a former high school classmate of Mallory's. Wait, so you own the house. And she called you a freeloader? That is messed up. Ping, my cousin, David, who had laughed at the original post. Is this real? Does Aunt Janice know you posted this? I did not reply to any of them. I let the silence do the heavy lifting. I wanted them to sit in their discomfort. I wanted them to realize that they had allowed themselves to be manipulated by a pretty picture and a catchy caption without ever asking for the truth. Mallory's reaction was immediate and chaotic. She didn't comment on my post. She couldn't. The evidence was irrefutable. Instead, she tried to bury it. She started posting frantically on her own timeline to push my revelation down the newsfeed. She posted a quote card with a generic sunset background. Toxic people will always try to control your narrative when they lose control over you. Peace and light. Usually, a post like that would get 50 likes and a dozen "Stay strong, girl" comments within an hour. Today, it sat there, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 2 likes. One was from our mother, the other was from a bot account. The community had seen the deed. They knew who the toxic person was. The spell was broken. Mallory wasn't the noble victim anymore. She was the ungrateful tenant biting the hand that housed her. Then came the twist that I hadn't calculated, but welcomed with open arms. Mallory had been trying to build a career as a lifestyle influencer. She often tagged small brands in her photos, hoping for sponsorships. She had recently done a collaboration with a local boutique called Rustic Roots Decor, showcasing their throw pillows in her living room. The brand account, clearly managed by someone who followed local drama, commented on my post. It wasn't a private message. It was a public comment, visible to everyone. Rustic Roots Decor. Wait, we sent promotional products to 42 Willow Creek Lane under the agreement that it was the influencer's primary residence and property. Does Mallory Vance not hold the title? We have a contract regarding homeowner exclusivity. I stared at the screen. Mallory had signed a marketing contract claiming she owned the house. She had monetized a lie. I replied simply, "Please refer to the attached county clerk document. The property is held in trust. Mallory Vance has no title interest." Mallory must have seen the notification because her toxic people post was suddenly deleted. Then her entire profile went into lockdown mode. She restricted comments. She hid her friend list. She was hemorrhaging credibility, and for a narcissist, that is a fate worse than death. "She is panicking," Omar said, reading the thread over my shoulder. "You just cut off her supply." "I did not cut it off," I said. "I just turned on the lights. She is the one who can't survive in the glare." I checked the time. It was 2 o'clock. The deadline for the lease agreement was less than 24 hours away. The social media victory was satisfying, but it did not solve the legal problem. She was still in the house. I opened my email client. I composed a new message to Mallory Vance, CC Elias Thorne, Esquire. Subject: Final reminder. Lease agreement, deadline, Mallory. As of this timestamp, I have not received a signed lease agreement or a security deposit. The offer for option 1 expires tomorrow at noon, if no signature is received. We will proceed immediately with option 2 eviction. Also, please be advised that utilities must be transferred by close of business tomorrow. I will be scheduling the disconnect orders for the accounts currently in my name effective Monday morning. Everly. I sent it. The response did not come via email. It came via a text message to Omar. My husband's phone buzzed on the coffee table. He picked it up, frowned, and then his face went dark. A dangerous kind of dark. "What is it?" I asked. He held the phone up so I could see. It was from Mallory. "Tell your wife to back off. If she doesn't take down that post and sign over the deed, I am going to call your boss at the engineering firm. I know about the side project you did last year without clearing it with HR. I will tell them you stole company time. I will make sure you never work in this state again." I felt a cold rage settle in my stomach. She was targeting Omar. She knew she couldn't hurt me anymore. I held all the cards, so she was going after the bystander. She was willing to destroy my husband's career to keep a house she didn't own. "She is bluffing," Omar said, his voice low. "That project was cleared. I have the email approval from the VP. "It doesn't matter if she is bluffing," I said. "The intent is there. She is trying to blackmail us." "I am going to reply," Omar said. "No," I said. "Don't. I have to. Ev, she threatened my job." "Forward the screenshot to me," I said. "I will add it to the folder. We send it to Thorne. Extortion is a crime. She just handed us a restraining order on a silver platter." Omar forwarded the text, but he didn't put the phone down. He stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the gray sky over Ravenport. He looked disturbed, not angry anymore, but deeply unsettled. "Ev," he said after a long moment. "Yeah." "Why are they doing this?" "Because they are entitled," I said. "Because they are embarrassed." "No," Omar said, turning around. "This is too much. Shame makes people hide. Shame makes people move away and start over. This is desperation. Mallory is terrified. Mom and Dad are terrified. Look at how hard they are fighting. They are threatening my job. They are forging deeds. They are risking felony charges." He walked over to the table and tapped the screenshot of the deed I had posted. "Nobody fights this dirty just to save face," he said. "People fight this dirty when they are protecting a secret." "What kind of secret?" I asked. "It is just a house." "Is it?" Omar asked. "Think about it. Why was Mallory so obsessed with the mail? Why did she forbid us from going into the garage attic? She said it was storage for her delicate fabrics. Remember, she put a padlock on it." I remembered. It was a heavy-duty padlock. I had assumed she was just being her usual territorial self. "And why?" Omar continued. "Did your dad show up at the house every Wednesday night for maintenance when nothing was broken? He would go straight to the basement or the garage and stay there for an hour." I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. I had processed the financial fraud. I had processed the emotional abuse, but I had viewed it all through the lens of money and ego. "You think they are hiding something inside the house," I said. "I think the house isn't just a place to live for them," Omar said. "I think it is a vault, and you just threatened to change the locks." He looked me in the eye. "They aren't afraid of being homeless. Ev, they are afraid of what you are going to find when you finally walk through that front door as the owner." I looked at the email I had just sent. Disconnect orders, eviction. If Omar was right, I wasn't just kicking them out. I was about to uncover something that would make the freeloader post look like a nursery rhyme. "Tomorrow," I whispered. "We find out tomorrow." "We don't go alone," Omar said. "If there is something in that house worth destroying my career over, we don't go in there without backup." The stage had changed hands. I thought I was the director of this play now, but as the sun set, I began to realize I might be a character in a much darker genre than I had anticipated. When you strip a narcissist of their public mask, they do not reflect on their behavior. They do not apologize. They simply switch weapons. When the court of public opinion turned against Mallory, she abandoned the public square and retreated into the shadows of private whispers. She knew she could not win on the timeline anymore, so she decided to win at the dinner table, the grocery store aisle, and the family group chat. The strategy is as old as time, but in the age of digital communication, it moves at the speed of light. It is called the smear campaign. If you cannot destroy the message, the deed, the facts, The law you must destroy the messenger. It started with a phone call from my Aunt Linda on Thursday afternoon. Linda lives in Ohio and rarely calls unless someone has died or gotten married. "Everly," she said, her voice dripping with that specific kind of concern that masks curiosity. "I am just checking in. Mallory called me." She sounded hysterical. "I imagine she did," I said, typing a command into my work terminal. "She is worried about you, honey," Linda continued. "She says you are having episodes. She said you have been acting erratic lately, paranoid. She mentioned that Omar has been isolating you from the family and monitoring your phone calls." I stopped typing. The brilliance of it was sickening. By accusing Omar of controlling me, she inoculated herself against anything I said. If I fought back, it was just Omar talking. If I presented legal documents, it was Omar making me do it. She was stripping me of my agency to preserve her own. "Aunt Linda," I said calmly, "I am not isolated. I am legally evicting a tenant who has refused to pay rent for 3 years. The fact that the tenant is my sister does not change the math." "Well," Linda hesitated, "she said you threatened to hurt yourself if she didn't leave. That sounds serious. Everly, maybe you should speak to someone." I felt the blood drain from my face. She was weaponizing mental health. She was planting seeds of instability so that if we ended up in court, her lawyer could paint me as an unreliable narrator. "I am recording this call. Linda," I said, "and I will be adding Mallory's slander to the lawsuit file. If you repeat these lies, you will be named as a co-conspirator in a defamation case." Linda hung up. I logged the call in my spreadsheet. Thursday, 3:45 p.m. Source: Aunt Linda. Content allegations of mental instability and spousal abuse. Action recording saved. My mother, Janice, took a different approach. She opted for emotional terrorism. She called 10 minutes later. She was crying so hard she was hyperventilating. "You are breaking my heart," she wailed. "We were a happy family until you started this greed. You are destroying us over bricks and mortar. How can you sleep at night knowing your sister is crying on the floor?" "Mallory is crying because she got caught," I said. "And you are crying because you enabled her for 30 years and now the bill is due." "You are cold," my mother spat, the sadness instantly replaced by venom. "You have always been cold. You think you are better than us because you have that fancy job and that husband who whispers in your ear. He is the one doing this. My Everly would never hurt her family. You are being manipulated." "The only people who ever manipulated me were you and Dad," I said. "When you made me pay the mortgage while pretending Mallory owned the house, that is manipulation. Mom, this is just accounting." I hung up and blocked her number for 24 hours, but the most aggressive move came from my father, Graham. At 6 o'clock that evening, there was a heavy pounding on the door of our apartment. We had not given them our address, but Ravenport is not that big, and my father is a man who thinks boundaries are suggestions for other people. I looked through the peephole. It was him. He was wearing his serious business windbreaker. His face flushed red. "Open this door," he bellowed. "I know you're in there." Omar walked to the door. I grabbed his arm. "Don't open it. Call the police." "No," Omar said. "If we call the cops, they win the victim narrative. Daughter calls police on elderly father. I will handle it." Omar opened the door, but he filled the frame. He is not a violent man, but he is solid, grounded, and unmovable. He stood on the threshold, crossing his arms. "Graham," Omar said, "you are trespassing." "I want to talk to my daughter," my father growled, trying to look past Omar. "Get out of my way. Son, this is family business. You are just the husband." He tried to step forward, to physically intimidate Omar, to use that blustering patriarchal weight that had silenced me for decades. He moved into Omar's personal space, his chest puffing out. Omar didn't flinch. He didn't step back. He looked down at my father with a gaze that was entirely devoid of fear. "I am not your son," Omar said quietly, "and this is not family business. This is a legal dispute between a trustee and a squatter. If you take one more step, I will file a restraining order, and you will never see Everly again." "You are brainwashing her," my father sneered, pointing a finger in Omar's face. "She does not have the guts for this." "She has the deed," Omar said. "And she has a lawyer. Anything you want to say. You write it down and mail it to Elias Thorne. Now get off my doormat." My father stood there for a long moment, shaking with impotent rage. He realized, perhaps for the first time, that his anger was no longer a currency we accepted. He turned and stormed down the hallway, muttering curses. I documented the visit. 6:10 p.m., Graham Vance, attempted physical intimidation. Witness Omar Ruiz. We ate dinner in silence, the adrenaline crash leaving us exhausted. I thought the worst was over for the night. I thought they had played all their cards. I was wrong. At 8:30, my laptop chimed with a frantic, repetitive alert sound. It was the property title monitoring system. Critical alert. New filing detected. I rushed to the screen. My heart hammered against my ribs. A new document had been uploaded to the county clerk's portal. It was marked urgent. I clicked the preview. It was a document titled Grant Deed, Quitclaim. It appeared to transfer ownership of 42 Willow Creek Lane from the Walter Hennessy Trust to Mallory Vance for the sum of $1. I scanned the bottom of the page. There, in blue ink, was a signature. Everly Parker, trustee. I stared at it. The signature looked like mine. It had the loop on the E and the sharp cross on the T. But I had not signed it. I had been sitting in this apartment all day. "She forged it," I whispered. "She actually forged my signature." "What?" Omar was beside me in a second. "She submitted a fake deed," I said, pointing at the screen. "She traced my signature from an old birthday card or a check. She is trying to steal the title before the eviction goes through." "That is a felony," Omar said. "That is prison time, Ev." "She is desperate," I said. "She thinks that if she gets the title recorded, she can take out a loan against the house before I can stop her. Once the money is out, it is gone." I grabbed my phone and dialed Elias Thorne's emergency line. He answered on the second ring. "Mr. Thorne," I said, "they just uploaded a forged quitclaim deed." "I see it." Thorne's voice was crisp. "I got the alert too. Do not panic. It is past business hours. The clerk cannot record it until 8 a.m. tomorrow. We have 12 hours. What do we do?" "I am filing an emergency notice of fraud concern and a lis pendens right now," Thorne said. "I will have a courier at the clerk's office when the doors open. We will freeze the title. That document will never be recorded. But Everly—" "Yes." "This changes things," Thorne said. "This is no longer a civil eviction. This is attempted grand larceny and forgery. Once I file this notice, there is no going back. The district attorney might get involved." "File it," I said. "Freeze everything." I hung up. 30 minutes later, the freeze must have hit the system, or perhaps the online status changed to contested. My phone rang. It was Mallory. I answered. "What did you do?" she whispered. Her voice was unrecognizable. It wasn't the screaming banshee or the arrogant influencer. It was the voice of a child standing in the wreckage of a vase she just broke. "I protected my asset," I said. "The clerk knows the signature is a forgery. Mal, Thorne has flagged the account. Please," she said, and then she started to cry. Real, ugly tears. "Please, Ev, you have to lift the flag. You have to let it go through. Just for 2 days. I swear I will transfer it back. I just need the title for 48 hours. "Why?" I asked. "Why do you need the title for 2 days?" "Because we are sisters," she sobbed. "Because I held your hand when you got your tonsils out. Because we share blood. Don't do this to me. If that deed doesn't record tomorrow, I am dead." "You are not dead," I said. "You are just homeless." "No," she shrieked, the aggression snapping back like a rubber band. "You don't understand. I need the equity I already promised it if I don't get the loan. They are going to come for me." "Who is coming for you?" "Fix it," she screamed. Fix it or I will tell everyone you are crazy. I will ruin you." I hung up. I sat there, looking at the black screen of the phone. The puzzle pieces finally clicked together. The desperation, the fake ownership, the intercepted mail from Global Lending, the panic over the deed. "It is not about the house," I said to Omar. "It never was. What is it then?" "She borrowed money," I said, my voice hollow. "She borrowed money against the house already. Hard money, private lenders, the kind of people who give you cash based on a promise that you own the asset." "But she didn't own it," Omar said. "She told them she did." I said, "She probably showed them the fake deed or the old utility bills. She took a merchant cash advance or some predatory loan to fund her lifestyle, thinking she could pay it back or flip it before anyone noticed. But the bill is due, and if she doesn't have the title to secure the loan, she has committed fraud against the lenders." Omar looked at me, his eyes wide. "So when you evict her—" "When I evict her," I said, "I am not just taking her home, I am exposing her collateral as a lie." She wasn't fighting for a place to sleep. She was fighting to keep a Ponzi scheme of lies from collapsing on top of her. "She is going to lose everything," Omar said. "She already has," I said. "She just hasn't checked the balance yet." I walked to the window. The city lights were blurring in the distance. I felt a strange, cold sorrow. I didn't hate her, I just pitied her. She had built a castle out of dynamite, and she was mad at me for lighting a match to read the lease agreement. "Get some sleep," I told Omar. "Tomorrow is Friday. We have to go to the house." "Why?" "Because," I said, turning back to him, "if she owes money to dangerous people, and she knows she is losing the house, she is going to try to take whatever value is left inside before she runs." We had stopped the theft of the paper. Now we had to stop the theft of the physical reality. The morning after the fraud alert, the mail arrived at our new apartment. It was not a coincidence. When you owe money to people who operate in the gray zones of finance, they do not rely on the Postal Service's change of address database. They use skip tracers. They use data aggregators. They find you. I held the envelope in my hand. It was thick, ominous, and stamped with red ink. Final notice of default. Pre-legal action. The return address was for a company called Summit Point Capital, based in Delaware. I had never heard of them. I had never borrowed a dime from anyone other than a federally insured bank. Yet, my name was printed on the front, right next to the name, Vance Interiors. I opened it. My background in risk analysis means I speak the language of debt. I know the difference between a mortgage, a personal loan, and the predatory instruments designed to strip a debtor of their skin. What I held in my hand was a merchant cash advance, or MCA. It is technically not a loan. It is a purchase of future receivables. Because it is not a loan, it is not subject to usury laws. The interest rates can effectively hit triple digits. It is the financial equivalent of a pipe bomb. I laid the documents on the kitchen table and began the autopsy. Mallory had signed a contract with Summit Point Capital 6 months ago. She had received a lump sum of $45,000. In exchange, she had agreed to pay back $68,000 via daily withdrawals from her business bank account. But here was the catch. Here was the poison pill. To secure the funding, she had to provide proof of business location and proof of asset stability. She had submitted the utility bills for 42 Willow Creek Lane, the electricity, the gas, the high-speed internet, all of which were in my name. By doing this, she had inextricably linked my credit profile to her toxic debt in the eyes of the lender's algorithm. And because she had likely forged my signature on a landlord waiver or listed me as a silent partner to explain the name discrepancy. Summit Point Capital was now coming after me. They weren't just asking for money. They were threatening to file a UCC-1 financing statement against the property. They believed Vance Interiors owned the house, or at least had enough equity in it to cover the $68,000 she now owed, because she had stopped making payments. "She sold us," I whispered, feeling the paper crinkle under my grip. She didn't just live there, she sold the address. Omar picked up one of the pages. $68,000. Where did the money go? Ev, she doesn't have any clients. She doesn't have inventory. She has an image, I said. The leased rover, the designer bags, the trips to networking events in Miami. She was funding a lifestyle she couldn't afford to convince people she was successful, so she could get more clients to pay for the lifestyle. It is a snake eating its own tail. I sat down and opened my laptop. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I went into auditor mode. I scanned the threat letter. I scanned the attached contract, which showed a signature that looked suspiciously like a traced version of my own. I drafted an email to Elias Thorne. Subject unauthorized pledging of trust assets / third-party liability. Elias. See attached. Mallory Vance secured a merchant cash advance using the trust property as collateral and my credit identity as a guarantor without my consent. Summit Point Capital is threatening to place a lien on the home. Please issue an immediate cease and desist to the lender. Provide them with the deed of trust showing she has no title interest. Inform them that any attempt to encumber the property will be met with a suit for slander of title. I hit send. Then I looked at the date on the default notice. She had defaulted 2 weeks ago. That was the timeline. That was the key. 2 weeks ago, the money ran out. The lenders started calling. She needed a way to stall them, or a way to get a new loan to pay off the old one. But to get a new loan, she needed the deed. And to get the deed, she needed me gone. The freeloader post wasn't just cruelty, it was a strategic eviction. She needed me out of the house so she could access the physical files, intercept the mail, and present herself as the sole owner to the next lender. She vilified me to the community to ensure that if I complained, no one would believe me. It was evil, but it was rational, in a desperate, criminal sort of way. My phone rang. It was my mother. I had blocked her cell. But she was calling from the landline at the house I owned. I answered. Everly, she sounded breathless, terrified. We need to talk, right now. I am listening, I said. There are men here, she whispered. 2 men in suits. They are walking around the driveway taking pictures of the cars. They said they are looking for Mallory. They said something about asset recovery. Those are the repo men. Mom, I said. Or process servers. Tell Mallory her friends from Summit Point Capital have arrived. You have to stop them, she cried. They are going to take the car. The neighbors are watching. I cannot stop them, I said. Mallory signed the contract. She spent the money. If she didn't pay it back, they have the right to recover their collateral. But the house, my mother wailed. They asked if we own the house. Graham told them yes. He told them it is family property to make them go away. I closed my eyes. My father, in his arrogance, had just poured gasoline on the fire. By verbally confirming ownership to a debt collector, he had given them more ammunition to attach the lien. Put Dad on the phone, I said. He is outside arguing with them. Tell him to stop talking, I commanded. Tell him that if he says one more word to those men, he is aiding and abetting fraud. The house belongs to the trust. If he claims otherwise, he is liable for her debt. The line went dead. She had dropped the phone to run outside. I looked at Omar. It is collapsing. The whole facade is coming down today. Good, Omar said. Let it fall. Then, his phone buzzed. He looked at the screen and frowned. It is Trent, Mallory's ex. Yeah, we haven't spoken in 2 years. Omar opened the message. He read it, and his eyebrows shot up. You need to see this, he said, handing me the phone. Trent Hale had sent a long text, followed by a series of screenshots. Omar, I saw Ev's post about the deed. Good for her. I figured you guys should know the truth about why Mal went nuclear on you last week. She didn't just do it for fun. She was bragging about it to me before she did it. I kept the texts because, honestly, she scares me. I scrolled down to the screenshots of a conversation between Mallory and Trent dated 10 days ago. Mallory, I am about to blow up my engagement numbers. I have a plan. Trent. What plan? Mallory. I am going to roast Everly. The freeloader angle. People eat that drama up. I need to get my interactions over 10,000 this week so I can show the metrics to this new brand partner. If I get the deal, I can pay off the sharks. Leave your sister alone. Mal. That is low. Mallory. She is just a prop. Trent. She doesn't have a brand. I do. I have to do what I have to do. Watch the likes roll in. I felt a nausea rising in my throat. She is just a prop. That was how she saw me. Not as a sister, not as a human being. I was content. I was raw material to be mined for sympathy likes, which could then be converted into financial leverage to cover up her gambling with high-interest debt. She premeditated it, I said, my voice shaking. It wasn't a snap decision. She planned it to boost her metrics. We have the motive, Omar said, and we have the proof of malice. I saved the images. I added them to the receipts folder. The folder was no longer just a collection of grievances. It was a criminal dossier. I had the defamation, the Facebook post, and the orchestrated comments. I had the trust violation, the hostile environment, and the refusal to vacate. I had the fraud, the forged signature on the quitclaim deed. I had the financial malfeasance, the merchant cash advance documents using the house as collateral. And now, I had the intent, the text messages to Trent proving she did it for profit. I zipped the folder. I named it Parker_V_Vance_evidence_final. I sent it to Elias Thorne with a note. File the eviction, file the fraud charges, include the restraining order. Thorne replied within 4 minutes. Received. We are going to court. I have secured an emergency hearing for Tuesday morning regarding the possession of the property. The fraud allegations will be referred to the district attorney's office concurrently. Everly. Once we file this, there is no turning back. She could face prison time for the forgery. I looked at the cursor blinking on the screen. I thought about the tonsillectomy when we were kids. I thought about the time she braided my hair before prom. Then I thought about the repo men in the driveway. I thought about the debt collectors calling my number. I thought about the text message calling me a prop. I typed my reply to Thorne. Proceed. She made her choices. I am just signing the paperwork. I stood up and walked to the window. The sun was setting over Ravenport, casting long, bruised shadows across the city. My family was currently in a panic, likely shouting at men in suits, frantically trying to spin a new web of lies to replace the one that had just been torn down. They were calling me, texting me, probably begging me to save them one last time, but my phone was on silent. I wasn't their fixer anymore. I wasn't their bank. And I certainly wasn't their prop. Omar, I said, turning to my husband. Yeah. Pack a suit, I said. We have a court date. The investigation was over. The trial was about to begin, and for the first time in the history of the Vance family, the truth was going to be under oath. The night before a court hearing is never silent. It is a specific kind of loud, filled with the scratching of pens, the hum of printers, and the phantom noise of your own heart trying to beat its way out of your chest. It was Monday, 9 o'clock at night. The hearing for the emergency eviction and the preliminary injunction on the title fraud was set for Tuesday morning at 9. I was sitting on the floor of our new living room, surrounded by 3 distinct piles of paper. Pile A was the trust documents. Pile B was the evidence of the debts. Pile C was the social media logs. My laptop pinged. It was an email from Mallory. It was not the screaming, all-caps diatribe I had expected. It was short, lowercase, and terrifyingly casual. Subject truce, Ev, look, this is getting out of hand. Mom is a wreck. Dad is about to have a stroke. How about we make a deal? I withdrew the counterclaim about the emotional distress. You withdraw the eviction. I will delete the freeloader post. I will even post a nice picture of us. We call it even, family first, right? I stared at the screen. The audacity was breathless. She wanted to hit the reset button. She wanted to trade a felony forgery charge for a nice picture on Instagram. She genuinely believed that everything in life was a transaction that could be reversed if the price was right. "She wants to settle," I said to Omar, who was pacing the kitchen. "What is the offer?" he asked. "She deletes the post. We pretend the last 3 years and the forgery never happened. She thinks she can negotiate with gravity," Omar said. "She jumped off the cliff, and now she wants to negotiate with the ground before she hits it." I hit reply. I did not use a salutation. There is no even here. "Mallory, you did not just post a mean photo. You attempted to steal a $2 million asset. You forged my signature. You leveraged my credit for a predatory loan. You turned me into a public joke to sell throw pillows. The time for a truce was 3 weeks ago. See you in court." I sent it. 10 minutes later. The notifications on my phone began to spike, but they weren't messages. They were motion alerts. I had installed a Ring camera system at the house 6 months ago. Mallory knew about the front door camera. She used it to check for her Amazon packages. But she did not know about the camera inside the detached garage, nor the one angled toward the back patio door. I had installed them after I noticed tools going missing. I had never given her the access codes. I opened the app on my phone. The feed from the garage camera flickered to life. It was grainy, black and white night vision, but the figures were unmistakable. My father, Graham, and my mother, Janice, were in the garage. They were frantic. My father was tearing open boxes marked Everly/storage and dumping the contents onto the concrete floor. My mother was holding a flashlight, her face pale and drawn. "It has to be here," I heard my father's voice through the tiny speaker. It was tinny, but clear. "She keeps the copies here. If we find the original trust amendment, we can shred it. We can say it never existed." "Graham, this is illegal," my mother whimpered. "It is survival," he snapped. "If she walks into court with that paper, Mallory goes to prison. Do you want your daughter in prison?" I felt a cold hand squeeze my heart. They weren't just packing. They were hunting for evidence to destroy. They were actively conspiring to obstruct justice to save the golden child. "They are looking for the deed," I told Omar. Turning the screen toward him, Omar watched for 3 seconds. Then he grabbed his keys. "Where are you going?" "I am going over there," he said. "Omar, no. It is dangerous. Let the police handle it. If we call the police, they arrest your parents," Omar said, pausing at the door. "Do you want to see your dad in handcuffs tonight, or do you want me to stop them?" I hesitated. Despite everything, despite the insults, the enabling, the cruelty, the image of my father being shoved into a squad car broke something inside me. "Just stop them," I said. "Don't let them inside the house." Omar left. I stayed glued to the screen. 20 minutes later, I saw headlights sweep across the garage wall on the video feed. Omar's car pulled into the driveway. He walked into the frame of the garage camera. He didn't look like the quiet, passive husband they had mocked for 3 years. He looked like a wall of granite. My father spun around, dropping a file folder. "What are you doing here? Get off my property." "It is not your property, Graham," Omar said. His voice was calm, terrifyingly level. "And you are currently committing burglary on camera." He pointed up at the small black lens in the corner. My parents both looked up, their faces frozen in horror. They realized, in that second, that I was watching, that I had been watching the whole time. "Leave the boxes," Omar ordered. "Get out of the garage. If you touch one more piece of paper, Everly sends the footage to the district attorney. She is watching right now." My mother dropped the flashlight. It clattered on the concrete. My father looked at the camera, then at Omar, then back at the boxes. The fight went out of him. He looked old, defeated. "We just wanted to help her," he whispered. "You are not helping her," Omar said. "You are digging the hole deeper. Go inside." They shuffled out of the garage like scolded children. Omar closed the garage door and locked it with his key, the key they didn't know he still had. Back at the apartment, I exhaled for the first time in an hour. But the night wasn't over. The digital war was still raging. Mallory, realizing her private truce had failed, went back to her public playbook. She posted a story on Instagram. It was a black screen with white text. The saddest betrayal comes from your own blood, when you spend your life protecting someone, only for them to turn around and sue you because they are jealous of your light. Karma is real. It was vague. It was manipulative. It was classic Mallory. But this time, the audience wasn't buying tickets to the show. I watched the replies roll in on the side of the screen. User Jenna. 92. Okay, but do you own the house or not? The deed she posted looked pretty real. User_local life. Why are you talking about betrayal when you forged a signature? People are talking. Mal. User_rustic roots. Please stop tagging us in your drama. We are still waiting on the return of our merchandise. She was losing control of the narrative in real time. She deleted the story 10 minutes later. But the damage was done. The doubt had set in. She was no longer the victim. She was the suspect. Then, at 11:30, the email from the lenders arrived. It was from the legal department of Summit Point Capital. Ms. Parker, we have received your cease and desist regarding the property at 42 Willow Creek Lane. While we acknowledge your claim of ownership, Ms. Vance represented herself as the owner with full authority to encumber the asset, due to the conflicting information and the default on the repayment schedule. We are preparing to file an immediate motion to intervene in your eviction case to secure our financial interest. We are also forwarding the file to our fraud investigation unit regarding the potential misrepresentation of collateral. My stomach dropped. Escalate. That was the word they used. They were not going to just walk away. They were coming for blood. And if they couldn't get it from the house, they would get it from Mallory personally. And if they filed for fraud, it wasn't just a civil dispute anymore. It was federal wire fraud. I forwarded the email to Elias Thorne. Elias, Summit Point is escalating. We need that order of possession tomorrow. If they put a lien on the house before I get the judgment. I am stuck in litigation for years, Thorne replied instantly. Lawyers like him don't sleep before a big trial. I am adding this to the exhibit list. We are submitting the signature analysis at 8 a.m. Everly. I need you to understand something. When I hand that analysis to the judge, the timeline shifts. If the judge sees the forgery and the lender fraud, he might refer this to the prosecutor from the bench. Are you ready for that? I looked at the question. Are you ready for that? Was I ready to send my sister to prison? I thought about the garage. I thought about my father dumping my boxes on the floor. Trying to erase my ownership, I typed, I am ready for the truth. Whatever consequences come with it are hers, not mine. At 12:45. My phone rang. It was Mallory. I debated not answering, but I knew this was the last time we would speak before we were on opposite sides of a courtroom aisle. I picked up. Ev? Her voice was small, trembling. It sounded like the little girl who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms. I am here, I said. I can't go to jail, she whispered. Please, I am scared. The lenders, they called me again. They said they know I don't have the deed. They said I committed fraud. You did, I said softly. You signed a contract pledging an asset you didn't own. You forged a quitclaim deed. Those are crimes. Mal, I didn't mean to, she sobbed. I just needed time. I thought, if I got the loan, I could pay off the first one, and then I would win that brand deal. And I would buy the house from you. I was going to fix it. I just needed the paper to make it work. You were gambling, I said. You were gambling with my inheritance and my credit? I am your sister, she screamed, the fear turning into anger again. Doesn't that mean anything? You are going to let them lock me up. I am not letting them do anything, I said. You did this. You built this cage, bar by bar. I am just the one who stopped you from pulling me inside with you. I will hate you forever, she hissed. If I go down, I will make sure everyone knows you are a monster. See you in court, Mallory. I hung up. I turned off the phone. The silence in the apartment was heavy. Omar was back. He was sitting on the sofa, holding his own phone, wearing headphones. He looked pale. What is it? I asked. I was looking for the photos of the house condition, he said. From the day we moved out, I wanted to make sure we had proof of the state of the walls in case they trash it tonight. And I found a voice memo, he said. I must have triggered it by accident while the phone was in my pocket. It was recording while we were loading the truck. Okay. It recorded a conversation in the kitchen, Omar said, while you were in the bathroom and I was outside. He unplugged the headphones and tapped the screen. The audio was muffled at first, the sound of fabric rustling. Footsteps. Then, Mallory's voice cut through, sharp and clear. She was talking to someone, likely my mother. Mallory. Let them go. It is better this way. Once they are gone, I can access the filing cabinet. I just need the house in my name. Mom, by any means necessary. If I have to forge her signature, I will do it. Who is going to check? She is too weak to sue me. She never fights back. Mother. Just be careful. Honey. Mallory. I don't need to be careful. I just need to be quick. The recording ended. I sat there, frozen. It wasn't panic. It wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a calculated, premeditated conspiracy to commit a felony, endorsed by my mother and executed by my sister, predicated on the specific belief that I was too weak to stop them. She called me weak, I whispered. She bet against you, Omar said. She bet everything on the idea that you would just roll over. I looked at the folder on my laptop. Parker_V_Vance_evidence_final. I opened it. I dragged the audio file into the folder. Send it to Thorne, I said. Wake him up. This is the nail in the coffin, Ev. No, I said, standing up and walking to the bedroom to lay out my suit for tomorrow. It was a navy blue power suit. Sharp. Professional. Unforgiving. It is not a coffin, I said. It is a mirror. Tomorrow. She finally has to look at herself. I turned off the lights. The city outside was dark, but my mind was crystal clear. The freeloader was gone. The sister was gone. The plaintiff was ready. Tuesday morning at the Ravenport County Courthouse was gray and drizzling, the kind of weather that makes the marble floors of the lobby slick and echoing. I wore my navy suit. Omar wore a charcoal blazer. We walked in with the synchronized cadence of soldiers marching toward a final objective. We saw them near the metal detectors. My family. They had dressed for a performance. My mother, Janice, was wearing a pastel cardigan and pearls, trying to project the image of a harmless, sweet grandmother. My father, Graham, wore his Sunday suit, looking stiff and indignant. And Mallory? She was wearing a white dress, something modest and delicate, designed to make her look young and vulnerable. She was clutching her phone in her hand, her thumb twitching over the screen, likely checking for sympathy messages, or perhaps deleting the evidence she realized too late was permanent. They saw us. My mother started to raise a hand, a reflex of the old dynamic where we would hug and pretend everything was fine. I did not break stride. I did not make eye contact. I walked past them as if they were strangers on a subway platform. Inside courtroom 4, the air was stale. Judge Holloway, a woman with reading glasses perched on the end of her nose and a reputation for zero tolerance regarding wasted time, took the bench. Case number 492, the bailiff announced. The Walter Hennessy Revocable Trust versus Mallory Vance and occupants. Elias Thorne stood up. He did not look like a shark today. He looked like a librarian who had found a book that was 3 years overdue. Ready for the plaintiff, Your Honor. My father stood up on the other side. He did not have a lawyer. He had insisted on representing the family, a decision that Thorne had told me would be fatal for them. We are here, Your Honor, Graham boomed, using his chest voice, and I would like to state for the record that it is a tragedy we are even in this room, a daughter suing her own flesh and blood over a roof over their heads. It is unnatural. Judge Holloway looked over her glasses. Mr. Vance, are you an attorney? I am a father, Graham said, puffing out his chest. And I am speaking on behalf of moral law. In this room, we follow property law, the judge said, her voice dry. Sit down, unless you have a document to present. Thorne moved forward. He did not start with the emotions. He started with the paper. Your Honor, Thorne said, sliding a binder across the bench. The plaintiff is the sole trustee of the property in question. The defendants are guests who were granted a license to occupy under specific conditions of the trust. Those conditions required, quote, a peaceful environment and the preservation of the asset's integrity. He paused, letting the words settle. We are submitting a timeline of events, Thorne continued. Exhibit A is a certified letter sent 7 days ago, offering a lease agreement. The defendants ignored it. Exhibit B is a social media post made by the defendant, Mallory Vance, publicly defaming the trustee as a freeloader while living rent-free in the trustee's property. This demonstrates clear hostility, violating the occupancy clause. I watched Mallory. She was staring at the table, her face pale. She knew the post was embarrassing, but she didn't think it was legal evidence. She was wrong. However, Thorne said, his voice dropping an octave, this is not just an eviction case anymore, Your Honor. We are submitting Exhibit C and D. These are significantly more grave. Thorne handed the bailiff a new stack of papers. Exhibit C is a notification from the county clerk regarding a quitclaim deed submitted electronically last Thursday. It purports to transfer the title from the trust to Mallory Vance. The signature of the trustee, my client, was forged. We have included a forensic comparison of the signature against known exemplars. The judge picked up the paper. She frowned. She looked at the signature, then at me, then at Mallory. Ms. Vance, the judge said, did you sign this document? Mallory stood up. Her legs were shaking. It was a misunderstanding. Your Honor, I was just trying to help organize the paperwork. It was a placeholder. A placeholder, the judge repeated. You submitted a transfer of title for a $2 million property as a placeholder. It was a joke, Mallory blurted out, tears springing to her eyes. It was just a prank to scare Everly. I wasn't really going to steal the house. We are sisters. We play pranks. The courtroom went silent. Even my father looked down at his shoes. It was the worst possible defense she could have chosen. Exhibit D, Thorne said, cutting through the silence like a knife. An audio recording taken 3 days ago inside the residence. He pressed a button on his laptop. The audio played through the courtroom speakers. It was clear, undeniable. I just need the house in my name, Mom, by any means necessary. If I have to forge her signature, I will do it. Who is going to check? She is too weak to sue me. The voice echoed off the high ceilings. She is too weak to sue me. Mallory let out a small, strangled sob. My mother covered her mouth with her hand. Thorne closed the laptop. The plaintiff asserts that forgery, conspiracy to commit fraud, and the unauthorized pledging of the property as collateral for high-interest debt, which we have documented in Exhibit E, are not pranks. They are felonies. They are a direct threat to the asset. Judge Holloway set the papers down. She took off her glasses. She looked at Mallory with a mixture of pity and steel. Ms. Vance, the judge said, the court finds that the license to occupy has been irrevocably breached. You have not only failed to pay rent, you have attempted to defraud the owner and the county records office. Your Honor, please, my father tried to interject. We have nowhere to go. Then you should not have tried to steal the house you were staying in, the judge snapped. She banged the gavel. It was a sharp wooden crack that sounded like the breaking of a spell. Judgment for the plaintiff. Immediate possession granted. The sheriff is authorized to oversee the removal of the defendants within 24 hours. Furthermore, due to the evidence of forgery presented in Exhibit C, I am referring this matter to the District Attorney's Office for review regarding criminal charges. Case closed. It was over. In 12 minutes, 3 years of gaslighting had been dismantled by the machinery of the law. We walked out of the courtroom. The hallway felt brighter, the air cleaner, but they were waiting for us. Mallory lunged at me near the water fountain. She grabbed my arm. her nails digging into the sleeve of my jacket. Her face was a mask of ruined mascara and terror. "You are ruining my life," she screamed, her voice echoing in the corridor. "Are you happy? You are sending me to jail. You are putting Mom and Dad on the street. You are a monster. Everly. A jealous, bitter monster." Omar stepped forward to intervene. But I held up a hand. I didn't need protection. Not anymore. I looked at her hand on my arm. Then I looked into her eyes. There was no sister there. Just a drowning stranger trying to pull me under. I gently, but firmly, peeled her fingers off my jacket. "I did not ruin your life, Mallory," I said. My voice was quiet, calm, and terrifyingly steady. "You put your life on the internet for likes. You built a brand on lies. You forged a deed because you thought you were smarter than the law. I didn't do any of that." I stepped back. "You wanted a story," I said. "You wanted to be the main character. Well, now you are. But this is a legal drama, not a lifestyle blog. And in legal dramas, actions have consequences." "Where are we supposed to go?" my mother wailed, clinging to my father. "You have 24 hours to figure that out," I said. "I suggest you start packing instead of screaming." We turned and walked away. I could hear them crying behind us. But the sound didn't hurt me. It sounded like history. The final act wasn't the eviction. The final act was the cleanup. 2 days later, the house was empty. They had left it in chaos trash on the floors. Holes in the walls where pictures had been ripped down, but they were gone. I stood in the living room with a real estate agent named Sarah. "It is a beautiful property," Sarah said. "The market is hot. We can list it for $2.2 million. Do you want to keep it as a rental?" "No," I said. "Sell it." "Are you sure? It has been in the family for a long time." "It is not a home," I said. "It is a crime scene. Sell it. I want a clean break." Selling the house was the only way to sever the tie completely. If I kept it, they would always circle back. They would always feel like it was theirs. Converting it into cash meant erasing the physical gathering place of their entitlement. But I had one last letter to write. I sat on the floor of the empty house and drafted a formal notice to Summit Point Capital and the other predatory lenders Mallory had engaged. "To the legal department, please be advised that the property at 42 Willow Creek Lane is being sold by the trust. The proceeds will be distributed to the beneficiary. As previously established, Mallory Vance had no title interest and no authority to pledge this asset. Any liens you have attempted to attach are void ab initio, due to fraud. Your recourse for the outstanding debt of $68,000 lies solely with the individual who signed your contract, Mallory Vance. Good luck with your collections." I hit send. By selling the house and voiding the collateral, I had stripped Mallory of her last shield. She still owed the money, the sharks were still circling, but now, she had no bait to distract them. She would have to face the consequences of her financial habits without a safety net. 6 months later, the apartment in Ravenport is quiet. It smells like fresh basil and lemon, not old paper and secrets. Omar and I used the proceeds from the house sale to start our own consultancy firm. We work hard. We pay our bills. We don't ask anyone for anything. I go to therapy on Thursdays. We talk about the voice of the freeloader, the internal monologue that tells me I have to buy people's love to be worthy. It is getting quieter. Some days, I don't hear it at all. Mallory is currently awaiting trial for forgery. She lives in a small apartment in a different county. My parents moved in with her, and from what I hear through the grapevine, it is not a happy house. The lenders garnished her wages. Her brand is dead. The internet moved on to the next villain, leaving her with nothing but her debts. I haven't posted on Facebook in half a year. But today, I decided to write one last status, a closing statement. I didn't use a filter. I didn't use a hashtag. Just plain text on a white background. I spent 3 years thinking I was paying rent. I realized too late that I was paying a ransom for a family that didn't exist. I left that house not because I lost, but because I finally respected myself enough to stop playing a role in their fiction. The freeloader is gone. The owner has moved on. I closed the laptop. Omar put a cup of coffee on the table. "Ready to go?" he asked. "We have that meeting at 10. "I am ready," I said. I walked out the door and didn't look back. Thank you so much for listening to this story. It was a wild ride from the driveway to the courtroom, and I hope you enjoyed seeing justice finally served. I would love to know where you are tuning in from. Are you listening from a busy city like Ravenport, or somewhere quiet across the ocean? Please drop a comment below and let me know your thoughts on how Everly handled her family. And if you want more stories where the truth wins, please make sure to subscribe to Juliet Revenge Stories, like this video, and hit that hype button so we can share this journey with even more people. Your support means the world. Stay safe and always keep your receipts.